Hello everyone and welcome to Objective-C for Noobs Part 2. And today we're going to be talking about variables and specifically the int variable. And as I said, what we're going to learn is what a variable is. We're going to talk about the general idea behind a variable, and we're going to be focusing on the int variable, and that's the first type of variable that we're going to learn about. But we're going to learn about quite a few others as well in a later series. And we are going to learn how to declare and how to assign values to these variables. So let's just get started right away. And the first thing we're going to do is to create a new project. So open up Xcode, create a new project, select the command line tool under the OS X application tab. Press next and give it a name. I'm just going to call this the int variable. Organization name and company identifier you can set to whatever you want. Set the type to foundation if it's not already selected, and use automatic reference counting is checked. Press next and place your project where you want to. And this is our project now. Let me just increase the font size for you real quick. There we go. So over here you press on this main.m file. It's located under the folder named your project name, and you can see that it's already stuffed out with a lot of code, and you might not understand anything of this. This all looks like gibberish. And the first thing worth mentioning is this green stuff here and the green stuff in here. Everything written in green, and that's after these two forward slashes, is actually comments. And comments, they are not code. They are a way for you to document your code, so you can, if you're making some long algorithm, a long computation of some sort, and it's kind of complicated, you might want to throw in a few comments to say, well, this code is to do this, and this code is doing this, so that the next time you read it in maybe a few months, or if another programmer reads it, they'll know what you talk about instead of having to analyze your code. So the first thing we're going to do is actually learn how to write comments, because I want to get you in the habit of writing comments from the get-go. But that raises another question, because where do we start to write code? This is actually included in every project you make. We already established that this up here was comments, so we don't have to worry about this, because when the computer is running your program, it's actually going to skip all the comments and start reading your code. So we don't worry about this. You can delete it if you want to, but I like to keep it there because it includes the date on when the project was created, and can be kind of fun to know that date. It imports something, and there's some stuff here and an auto release pool. It doesn't make any sense, but all you have to worry about is that we write our code between this bracket here, that's after the auto release pool sentence, and this bracket here just above the return 0 statement. So in here is actually where we write our code, and you can also see that Xcode included a comment that says insert code here, and then something called an NSLog statement that logs out the hello world sentence. But we're just going to go ahead and delete everything between these two brackets, and be sure you don't delete the brackets themselves. So delete this, and then make a few blank spaces so you have some space to work on. And then just select a random line between these two brackets. Now this in here is our workspace. We're going to be writing all our code in here. And the first thing we're going to write is comments. And we write comments by making two forward slashes, and you can see they turn green when you make them. And then everything you write next to them will be written in green. So we can say that this is our first comment. If we press enter, we get a new line, and we can't just keep writing. We're going to have to make two more forward slashes. And we can say another comment. Now, this can actually be a tedious task because every time you press enter you have to make two forward slashes. But there's actually another way, because say you want to make a big chunk of comments, you can do that by making a forward slash and then the asterisk sign here, the star. And then you can see that this down here actually turned green. Well, that's because this here, it will actually turn everything into comments between the starting one and the closing one. Oh. So see, we write blah blah blah, and that. There we go. Everything between this and this here will be written in green, so you can actually have multiple lines. Let's say this is a chunk of comments, and I can press enter and all sorts of funny stuff. And you can see that it's all written in green because everything between the forward slash star and the star forward slash is written in comments. And that's the syntax, that's how you write it. And that's actually the two kind of comments that there exist. The two forward slashes that will comment out a single line, and the slash star and the star slash that will chunk out a piece of comments. Okay, so that was just a small bonus. Now you know how to write comments, and as promised we're going to look into the int variable. And how do we actually make a variable? But what is a variable? I keep mentioning this variable stuff and you might not even know what it means. Well, you can think of a variable like a box, and this box, it has a name, and you can put stuff inside this box so that whenever you call out the name of this box, you can see what's inside it. A good example is, well, your bank account. You could say that your bank account was actually a variable, and the variable had a name. It could, for instance, be your name bank account. And in your bank account, there would be a number, a value, and that value, that number, would be the amount of money that you had in your bank account. And that's actually a variable because you can store in new values. Maybe there's you get a paycheck and you add in some money and then the value inside it changed. But your bank account, it can never have two different values at the same time. If you change the value, that's the new value that it has. So one variable can only have one value at each given time. And if you give it a new value, it will replace the existing value with the new value. Well, then you might say, well, I have several bank accounts with several different values. And again, that's the same concept. Then you just have several variables, each with their own value, and you always know which variable has which value because you can check the name of your bank account, the name of the variable, and then see what the value holds, what the variable holds. So that's actually the general idea behind a variable. It's some way for you to store values. And we're actually just going to go right ahead and make one. And the first thing we do is something that declares a variable. And we're going to comment that out because it's very good to start commenting out your code because, well, it's a habit you want to get into so that in your future you just do it without thinking about it. So we're just going to go ahead and declare a variable. And the first thing we write is int, and then space. You can see that it writes it in purple. And this is actually what stands for integer, the type of variable we are creating. So right now we told the computer we are making an int variable. We make a space, and then we write the name of our variable. I'm just going to call this variable. And now we're actually done. And whenever we're done with something we call a statement, we finish it off with a pair of semicolons. And now we're actually done. Now we told the computer that we're making an int variable. That's the type of our variable. And we named it variable. Then we're done with this statement, as we call it, and we put in a pair of comments. And just to quickly clarify what a statement is that it's basically whenever you say you're done with something, for instance, here we are done declaring our variable. Then we finish it out with a semicolon to tell the computer, well, I'm done here. This statement is complete, and now I'm moving on to something new. So it's like a punctuation in your essays. It's a sort of way to tell that there's a break here and we're moving on to something new. We finish off the statements. And if we just go out here, we open up this again. The int variable, well, what is that exactly? Because as I mentioned, we made it the type int, and int is actually short for integer, and the integer is actually a kind of number. It holds a certain set of numbers, and you can see int is short for integer. And what that means is that it can hold all sorts of numbers, but it can never hold decimal points. So you can't say that we will put in the number 5.0 or 5.2, 5.25 inside the variable. It can only hold values like 12, 54, 120, or minus 320, minus 12. Whole numbers, non-decimal numbers. And it's also worth mentioning that it has a certain range. So the maximum number that we can ever put inside this variable is actually, well, roughly minus 2,147,483,648 to 2 billion, well, blah, blah, blah. So these are actually the lowest and the highest number that the variable can hold, and then every whole number in between. And it's quite a lot, but it's also easy to get beyond this. But it's just worth mentioning to you that they are actually the maximum amounts of numbers you can hold, so you can't just put an infinite high number inside. And I keep saying that we can put numbers inside this variable, and yeah, that's actually true, and that's what we're going to go ahead and do right now. We're going to do something that called assign a value to our variable. And the way we do that is that we start out with writing the variable name, and we named it variable. So now we told the computer that we want to do something to the variable we named variable, and that was of type int. And we want to assign a value to it. We want to give this little box a number. So we say equals, and then the number we want to store inside it. So we could say 15. So now we actually told the computer that we want to take the number 15 and put it inside the variable number, or the variable number will be equal to the number 15. And then we're actually done assigning this value, so we're done with this statement, so we finish off with a pair of semicolons. So now we're actually done here. We actually made a variable and we gave it the number 15. And we can change the number anytime we want. We can say minus 15 as well instead. We can say minus 250. We can say 1250. And please note that we don't use a plus sign to indicate that it's a positive value. We just use the minus to indicate whenever it's a negative value. And that's actually how we make a variable. And we can make a new one. Declare a new variable. Remember, we started off with the type of variable, int. We're going to call it my variable. Set. And you may have noticed this yellow warning before, and warnings are actually something that we're going to go a bit more into detail later, but you can click on the warnings and they'll say what the program thinks the problem is, and it says that you have an unused variable called my variable. And that's true because we made this variable and we never did anything to it. So we're going to go ahead and assign a value to our new variable. And again, we take in my variable, and you can also see that when we start to write the name of the variable we want to work with, there's something called code completion that will actually throw in what it thinks you mean. For instance, here it says, well, are you meaning to type my variable? that you made of type int, and we can say, yeah, that was exactly what we're looking for, and we can just press enter now, and then it will fill out the rest. So it can actually save you quite a bit of time, and it can help you remember exactly what kind of word you were looking for. And now we're told that we want to do some work to my variable. We want to store a value inside it, and it's going to be -50. And then we finish off with a pair of semicolons. We can keep doing this forever, and just going to make this. So far we have two variables. We have this up here, the int that we call variable. We gave it the number 15. Down here we have another one we call my variable, and we gave it the number -50. And you can see we have two different names. One we call variable, and the other one we called my variable. But you can see I always start with a lowercase letter, and the next word I start with an uppercase. For instance, my, that's one word, and then variable, that's a new word, and I separate those two with starting the other word with a capital V. And this naming convention, that's actually something worth talking about, because variable names are actually quite important, and they're something I like to call legal names. And well, they're not illegal to use, but it's more like a convention. It's something that programmers expect you to do. And the first rule is that the first letter is always a lowercase. For instance, number or variable. It's always a lowercase letter you start out with. And it consists of letters and numbers only. It can consist of underscore as well, but you'll never see me use it. I always separate them with a capital letter. But you could say num2 ber 1 2 3. So you can have a mix of numbers and letters. You start each new word with a capital letter, and that's what I talked about before. You can say we start again with a lowercase because the first rule said we had to. The next word called number will start with a capital N, and the next word again, variable, will be a capital V. And you don't ever start with a number. That's actually illegal to do. Don't ever start with a number. Always start with a lowercase letter. And you should try to choose a name that matches the purpose. For instance, if we go back to the example of a bank account, you would call your variable bank account. You wouldn't call it my 23rd variable or another variable. Try to find a name that actually matches the purpose used for it, because it's another way of documenting your code inside the code, that whenever you read this variable you think, oh well, that's used for this or that. And if we just quickly go in here again, you can see that just make a new variable, declare step, int my 3 variable. So my third variable. We could say this was just to see that, or to show you that you can include numbers as well. And we can also give this a number equals -120. Semicolon at the end. So now we actually just made another variable. And you can see it's actually very, very fast to do. Just go out here and then open up again. And here I actually illustrated the variable concept, because there's actually 2 steps. As you see, there's 2 lines of code involved in writing a variable. And the first one is the declare step. That's where we told the computer that we're making a variable with this name, and we're reserving space in memory. So we're making this box that is connected to this name here. And then we're done with the first step, and the next step was that we assigned something to it. So we said my variable, and we gave it the number 15. So the number 15 is now inside the box, and my variable will always remember this number. Okay, so remember I said that one variable could only ever hold one value. So if we go back to the first variable here we call variable, we could say that we would give a new number to variable. And again, it's just the same as when we assigned it the first time. We write in the name of the variable that we want to work with, and we want to work with variable that currently has the number 15. We want to store a new number inside it. We want to store the number 5602. Finish off with a semicolon. And now we actually gave the variable another number, 5602. So which value does it have now? Well, it actually has the value 5602 because that's the newest or the latest value given to it. Because the computer will read the code just like humans do. It will start from the top and then read it down like this. So first it sees that you're making this variable, says okay, we got that. You give the number 15 to it, well, it's all fine. You make another variable here with a value and another variable here with a value. And then it says down here, okay, you're giving another value to this variable, so that's fine, and that's the value that it has right now. So it totally forgot about the first value it had. It's only ever going to remember the latest or the newest value given to it. And that's actually all there is to it, guys. And I'm going to finish off by giving you a few exercises. And the first exercise is that you should declare a variable with a legal name. And remember, declaring a variable was the first of the two steps involved in making a variable. So a legal name, and you decide which kind of name you want it to be. And then after that, I would like you to make a variable, declare a variable with an illegal name. Either start with a number or making a lot of different words with a lowercase letter or starting with a capital. It might not give you a red warning or saying that this is wrong, but I want you to know the difference between something that I like to call a legal and an illegal name. And even though that it's possible to use some of those I call illegal names, I strongly recommend that you don't do it because it's just a convention that programmers use. And then I want you to assign a value to the variable with a legal name and delete the illegal one. So you give a value to the first variable you made and you delete the declaration of the variable with the illegal name. And then I want you to declare and assign values to 3 other int variables. So basically what I just did, you make 3 variables of your own choice and you give them all a number. And that's actually all there is to it this time, guys. Next time we're going to be looking at how to print the values out to the console, but this video has already gone on for 23 minutes and I'm trying to give you bits and pieces at a time, so one topic at a time, not to make these videos last for 5 hours. So I hope you liked it, I hope you learned something, and please go to my forum and ask me questions if you have any questions at all, some concepts that you didn't understand, or, well, basically anything. Ask me any questions you want, and the link to the forum is at the description of the video. Please let me know what you think about the series, subscribe if you liked it, or comment here on YouTube. I'd love to hear from you guys, and I hope to see you in the next video.